Posting is nothing. Posting is nothing. Arguing online, nothing at all. Find something to join. Find a group to join in your local community. There is a meeting in your neighborhood. I don't give a shit if there's 2 people there, right? Go be the third. You do on some level need to be the change.
I'm Dr. Dana Fisher. Welcome to the Apocalyptic Optimist podcast. Real talk about what's broken and how we, and yes, even you, can actually fix it. Welcome back to the Apocalyptic Optimist podcast. Real talk about what's broken and how to fix it. Today, I am delighted to be speaking with comedian, writer, political activist, Adam Conover. I have had the pleasure of joining Adam on Factually a couple of times to talk about resistance to autocracy, to how we're going to save ourselves. And I am so honored and delighted that he agreed to join me today to talk with us here about his personal brand of apocalyptic optimism and what keeps him going. So that's where we're going, Adam. There's your warning.
Very happy to be here, and I appreciate the sign for the hazards up ahead, but I feel well equipped.
You're well known as the guy who ruins everything.
Sure.
By correcting the record, and more recently in terms of exploring how government works for better or for worse in the G word. At what point did you realize that exposing the truth and having the right facts wasn't enough to stop the systemic problems that are plaguing our society today? Just a little, little softball question for you.
I remember when I started doing Adam Ruins Everything, and I took such delight in saying the things we were saying and debunking the things we were debunking, and doing so forcefully and incontrovertibly. I remember we did one on a lie detector tests, how lie detector tests are truly fake. I mean, the idea that measuring a small electrical impulse as on someone's body as they speak would somehow detect whether or not they're lying is, like, on the face of it, ludicrous. That's like something maybe people would believe in the 40s. It's literally like what L. Ron Hubbard believed, but it's used in interrogations and the criminal justice system all across the country. And so we did like a really solid debunk of this, and I remember feeling all proud of myself. Yeah, the episode came out. Yeah, we did it. Oh, we really issued a smackdown to them. And then I remember thinking, oh yeah, but people are still going to use lie detector tests, aren't they? Like, they're still going to use polygraphs. Like, we're not, my episode came out, they're still going to use them. Like, what actually happened? Like, I actually maybe educated a couple 100,000 people about the lie detector test. That's not nothing, but it doesn't by itself change things. And that's the moment which I realized, there's a gap between media and action. And it's really hard to jump over. And that was around the same time that Jon Stewart was retiring the first time. And I remember thinking, oh, that's probably part of why, because he spent over a decade on air lambasting, Fox News, Fox and Friends, right? And they're still on the air despite, lying and deceiving people for money. I sort of imagine that Stewart was a little bit like, well, what's the point of that? I mean, I said it 1,000 times. I said it every day. If nothing's going to happen, then, why bother? So I understand that more apocalyptic point of view.
Yeah, we're going to get a little more into your apocalyptic point of view too. Before we turn towards and pivot towards the optimism, I want to ask you about the work you've done. You've gotten really vocal about political corruption and the role that technology is playing in kind of spreading right-wing ideology. And I was hoping you could kind of take us down that rabbit hole a little bit.
Well, the version that I tell for me is that, via the tech industry, the right wing has just sort of taken over the entire American media. The tech companies, which are really media companies, if you look at them, with the exception of, Apple sells hardware, Amazon sells, goods via retail by undercutting other retailers. The rest of them are media companies. Meta is a media company. X now is, as it's called, is a media company. Instagram, well, also media company. TikTok, media company. What are these people competing with? They're competing with traditional legacy media. This is what people do instead of watching a morning show, right? Well, the right wing has alleged for years, for decades, that the traditional media had a left-wing bias. They were largely right, if you agree, as I do, that left-wing viewpoints are closer to reality on average. Then, yes, the traditional media has a left-wing bias because, values such as, reporting reality is liberal, according to them. So they created an alternative.
Don't forget science, Adam.
And science, right? Yeah. Science is a left-wing value, right?
Clearly.
As you can see, now that they're in power, they're destroying all of science and academia because they believe that science and academia and knowledge are counter to right-wing goals. They believe that pretty explicitly. So they created an alternative media ecosystem where they didn't have to play by those rules, didn't have to play by the rules of journalism, didn't have to, listen to the FCC, didn't have to do anything reputably. And that was where they placed their bet. And they spent 10 years building that ecosystem. And then the tech companies came and they destroyed legacy media. Now that legacy media is largely decimated and dropping every year, the media that people are watching is the right-wing media, is podcasts, is Instagram, TikTok. Those are the places where the right wing dominates.
Not all podcasts, Adam. Let's just clarify.
Not all podcasts, but if you look at the top 10, the top 100, they're generally podcasts that espouse left-wing viewpoints. I mean, Pod Save America's number 12 or something. Great. Because they were able to more successfully take advantage of the tech industry disruption to create a media ecosystem in which they now dominate. And then, of course, there's the degree to which the people who run the various platforms have, avowedly right-wing views, Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and all that sort of thing, which is so just part of the water now. I'm almost bored talking about it,
Have you personally felt the effects of that in your work?
I mean, the disruption more than the politics of it, because like the kind of comedy that I do, the traditional media companies just stopped making. They just don't do it anymore. Like if I wanted to do a late night show, and imagine I'm more famous than I currently am. Right? People know me, but imagine I'm one of the most famous comedians in America, and I wanted to go around and pitch. Hey, I want to do a great late night show. People love this format. We're going to get amazing guests. The pitch is perfect. There isn't a single buyer for that in media. Nobody at Warner Brothers, nobody at Paramount, nobody at Netflix would buy that. I mean, Netflix literally had John Mulaney. That's the most recent attempt at a talk show is John Mulaney. He did 8 episodes of non-political comedy a year ago. That's how much they gave one of the biggest comedians in the country to do, essentially a late night show, right? And that's the kind of comedy that I do. I have other interests, I'm working on pitches and proposals, about narrative stuff, like any good Hollywood writer. But what I'm known for is topical comedy about the world that you actually live in, comedy about the real world. And they just don't make it anymore because the people don't talk about this that much. The traditional media companies, the Warner Brothers and the Netflix, if you want to include them, they gave up huge swaths of what television formerly was to YouTube. YouTube is now the #1 streaming platform on television sets, right? It's not Netflix. People spend more time watching YouTube on their television sets, the 60-inch screen in their living room that their couch is pointed towards, than they do Netflix. And YouTube is that is YouTube's biggest platform, is the television set. And what are people watching on there? If they want to watch high-end narrative scripted, right? If they want to watch, The Last of Us or whatever, they go to HBO Max or they go to Netflix, right? If they want to watch remember about the rest of television, whatever happened to the news, the talk shows, the food shows, the travel shows, the lifestyle programming, right? Everything else, it's all YouTube. That's where you go to watch all of that stuff. When people want to channel surf, they open YouTube, right? Oh, let me just watch what's on. I'll watch the YouTube algorithm. And that means that those traditional media companies have shrunk massively because they've stopped making that type of content. And among that was political commentary. And so, there's 10 years ago when I pitched Adam Ruins Everything, we pitched a dozen different networks. Now there'd be 0 meetings. They'd all say, we're not even in that business. Why are you trying to talk to? Why are you calling us? All we make is high-end narrative scripted and, nothing else. So for me, it's been, all right, I have sort of been pushed into the same, quote unquote new media. It's been new media for 20 years now, ecosystem. And I'm building my own business and my own platform on YouTube, which is, it's dicey, right? You have to play with the algorithm. The algorithm doesn't always prioritize the kinds of viewpoints that I want to say, but that's, I'm a creature of the media, and that's all we can do is go where the eyeballs are and go where the structures of media tell us to go.
All right, that's pretty apocalyptic there, Adam. Thank you. I think you took us as low as we need to go for today.
No problem.
But here, now we're gonna go up. So from here, there's nowhere but up to go anyway. So here's a question, and I know that you have a lot of thoughts and ideas about this and experiences with this. So how do we empower the little guy to push back against right-wing hegemony, to push back against the capitalist creep that we're seeing all over in so many different components of our lives? I mean, I wanted to push you to talk about your work as an organizer with the WGA and the ways that you've been platforming and supporting other workers, other, unionization in other contexts. I know you just did a show about that recently. Tell us about this pivot and what's working and how it's working for you.
Well, I mean, I do a lot of, I guess you'd call activism in the real world. I think of that as being active in my community. I'm part of the Hollywood community of writers. When I joined it, when I started working in this industry, I was well aware that the only reason I have a good health insurance program, the only reason I have a good pension, I'm literally vested in a pension plan, right? When I retire, presumably I make it that far, I'll receive a pension. That my grandfather got one of those, but they're vanishingly rare today. I get residuals. I still occasionally get a check for a couple pennies when, one of my shows is watched on an airplane somewhere. And it used to be more than that. I used to receive a good portion of my income was in residuals. Why was that? It's because I'm a member of a strong union that's been fighting for 90 years. And, a couple of years back, I want to say around 2019, we had a big fight with the agencies, which are these giant private equity-backed corporations. I won't get into the details, but we had to pick a fight with them. And I got involved in it because I believed in the fight. And, we had a political process in the union over, not everybody wanted to do the fight. Some people, want to be a little more friendly to the companies. And, we had to organize internally to make sure the fight was one that we wanted to take on. And I got involved in that. And, from there, I sort of joined the leadership group, and I'm on the board now. I've been elected 3 times to the board of the Writers Guild. And that wasn't me going, I want to do activism and make the world a better place. That was just me being a part of my community, right? And trying to make the world better for me and for the people around me. I've also got involved in LA local politics for the same reason. I around 2019, around the same time, actually, LA has a famously brutal homelessness crisis. And I got sick of walking by homeless people on my way to work every day. And I was like, why is there a barrier? Why can't I talk to these folks? Why I see the same person under the same bus shelter every day. And so I joined a group called SELA. It's a wonderful homelessness services organization that had just started in LA. When I joined it, it was literally just like 10 people meeting in a parking lot who wanted to figure out how to support homeless folks in our area because there's almost no services. And we started going around with water and, snacks and stuff. And we figured out how to connect people with services, really working with them one-on-one. And now it's been, 7 or 8 years. It's a proper organization with 501c3 status and donors. And we do a fundraiser and all that. I'm really proud to have been a part of that organization for many years. But then also one of the founders of that organization ran for city council. And I got involved in her city council campaign because, oh, wait, this is a lever. My city council district, the one that I live in, there's a person called a city councilman. And Oh, they're very powerful. And I've never heard of the guy who's the city councilman. Oh, because he doesn't want me to know who he is, because he wants to just be a behind the scenes power broker, and the city of LA doesn't want you to think about it, right? But here now my friend is running as an activist and saying, no, look, this is a powerful position. We can do things if we actually put work into it. And we got her elected. We knocked doors. She became the first person to beat an incumbent city council person in 20 years, right? And once she became the city council person, homelessness numbers in her district started dropping. She literally, one of the people who I used to visit every single, and this is a very small story, but a woman who I used to visit in homelessness services every single weekend, very chronic, mental illness and drug use and every other, disease of modernity that causes people to live on the street. We worked with her so much, and she was out there for years. Lovely person. My friend becomes city councilwoman, and she finally puts policies in place that helps her, right, and gets her into permanent treatment. And I've actually not lost touch with her, but I haven't seen her on the street in my neighborhood in a couple of years. And so, I saw the world around me get better. And now my friend, her name's Nithya Raman, she's running for the mayor of Los Angeles, on the same platform and the same way that she ran for city council person. And I think I'm volunteering on her campaign a lot, because you know what? I'm pretty sure we can get her to win, because we have done the groundwork, and we are the people in LA who have been trying to change the city, whereas everybody else has been ignoring it. And so, does that solve every problem in LA? Does that solve every problem in America? No. But does it make my corner of the world a little bit better? Yes. And that's all that you can really do, and the lesson that I drew from all this is that, I work in the media, I work in social media, I work on television, I work, I interview national politicians. There's a lie that we're told by all these systems that the only way that we can influence the world is by watching things, by paying for things, voting with our dollars, donating, voting once every 4 years or once every 2 years. And then that's it. Sit on the couch and let everybody else handle it. And withhold your money and don't follow problematic people or whatever, as though, or posting the right thing, and all that stuff is varying degrees of slightly helpful to meaningless. Voting, yes, good. Donating, fine. Posting, garbage, right? Bullshit. Nothing. Posting is nothing. Posting is nothing. Arguing online, nothing at all. It's tissue paper.
So you don't feel like that contributes to our civic engagement and debate online, Adam?
Yeah. Who gives a shit? Like, it doesn't matter. What matters is your presence at a meeting in person, right? Like, you have power in your society that they want you to ignore, that Mark Zuckerberg doesn't want you to think about. And that power coheres in the social position that you have in your community, right? As someone who pays rent, as someone who pays taxes, as someone who has a body who can show up in a physical location, as someone who can withhold your work from an employer. Those are places that you have power that you can, if you band together with other people, you can exert that power,
Wait, can I break a couple things down for a second? So you have said, and this is a quote from a piece you were in about your work on the WGA strike. You wrote, or you said, the face-to-face conversation is the atomic unit of politics, which I just thought was quite beautiful, and also really speaks to a lot of what you're talking about here. So and you're starting to kind of scale up in the way you're discussing this, but I thought we could just go back to this, this face-to-face conversation and how you've seen it work in your little corner of the world, in your corner of the universe, and how you've found, to the degree that you have, using media and your media presence to help expand that corner of the world, if you have.
Sure. I mean, so in the Writers Guild, right? The Writers Guild has 10,000 members. The way that we make things happen, if we want if those of us in leadership are looking at the state of the industry and we're saying XYZ is happening, we think we need to take action. And the way we take action is by getting those 10,000 members to all do something, right? Mm-hmm. Even if it's just click vote yes on one of our online elections, right? Or maybe it's
not to post about it, but click something. Is that what you're saying?
Well, click something in a union election to vote on whether or not we will go on strike, right? And then to actually withhold our labor, right? Not voting on a change.org petition, right? But voting on like a binding resolution with you and your other 10,000 members, right? The only reason a union is able to exert power is because those 10,000 people individually all make the individual choice to withhold their labor. If 3,000 of them decide, I don't really want to withhold my labor, I think I'll just keep working, right? We don't have a lever to stop them. We can't call the police to stop them. It's not literally against the law for them to do so. And so the strike doesn't work, right? Because the employers go, well, I still got, a third of the labor. So why do I give a, and so how do you get those 10,000 people to all withhold their labor? Well, it's an individual decision for each of them, and you need to talk to each of them individually. And so what do? We reach out to all those people individually. We have a system in the Writers Guild where our sort of super volunteers are called captains. And we empower those people with sort of extra information. They have extra meetings that they're willing to go to. And then each of those people has a team of about 100 people who they, give or take, who they represent. And they communicate with those people via email, but those people also call them on the phone. Those captains can call a board member if they want. And literally any member of the Writers Guild can call a board member at any time if they have a question. And so, if someone says, I don't know if I want to go on strike. Well, call me and talk about it. Right. And, we say you can make whatever decision you want, but here's how we see it. Right. And we try to have that one-on-one conversation. Also, why are we able to go on strike on the first place? Is because we've talked to those 10,000 people and we know what they care about. Right. We know what they need. We know what the pressures on them are. They're saying, hey, the way the business has changed in, XYZ way is really with my life. And we say, okay, we think the only way that we can change that is if we are all willing to go on strike, if we all threaten to go on strike. And if we have correctly communicated with them and we know what matters to them, then we are able to, put a strike together because we've talked to them one-on-one, right? And so it's the willingness to have those 10,000 in-person conversations. When we got people to vote for Nithya in Los Angeles, we did it by knocking doors and by having conversations. Hey, I'm not somebody who's flown in from a different state to try to convince you to do something.
Parachuting in. We like to say parachuting in.
Yeah. And by the way, I've done that. I did parachute door knocking for Kamala Harris in 2024 because I was like, I got to do something here. And, I saw the way people looked at me. They could tell I wasn't from, the suburbs of Phoenix. Right. But when I do that in LA, I'm like, hey, I live down the street. Oh yeah, I live across the street from blah, blah, blah middle school. And they're like, oh yeah, my kid goes there. Okay, well, I'm knocking doors for this person. She lives down the block. Maybe you want to vote for her. Oh yeah, no, I've seen her around. Yes, no, okay, I'll vote for her, right? That is what gets people to do things. And so having a system by which you have those conversations is
let me jump in. You can tell me in a second. But so what you're describing is like the reality of local policy making and how local politics, or all politics, is really local, as we both know, right? So here's a question I have for you, because there's a bunch of folks who are very concerned about the autocratic creep in our society, the poly crisis, the way that the climate crisis is basically, creating droughts and extreme weather and is going to get worse because we no longer believe in science in our country. So given that, there's a lot of discussion about trying to do stuff at the national level. And I was wondering, for example, there's a call for a general strike coming up. There are a bunch of folks organizing around this. And I don't see this kind of local, face-to-face component there. Do you have thoughts, advice, feelings about how that could be done in an effective way?
About a general strike specifically?
Sure, general strike.
I mean,
you can also say you're against a general strike too. If you are, you're welcome to say that as well.
90% of the time, I'm going to be really brutally honest with you, Dana. 90% of the time when I see people, quote, organizing for a general strike, I see people wasting their time. Because what are they doing? They're posting on Instagram, general strike, right? How many people is Mark Zuckerberg going to show their image? Even if it goes maximally viral, right? Couple million. That's not a general strike. And those people are going to see a graphic on Instagram and they're going to go, oh, okay, I'm not going to go to work because I saw an Instagram graphic. I want you to think about how many people would we need to do a general strike for it to be meaningful? 10 million, 20 million, right? Something like that. A
Yeah,
national
that's good,
general
yeah.
strike, if we're really talking
Yeah.
national, okay? So you need 10 million people to individually decide, I'm not going to go to work for one day. I'm not going to buy anything. How many of those people do you think are actually going to do that because they saw an Instagram graphic? I know that you think that as the organizer, maybe they should, right? But it doesn't matter what you think they should do. You need to get them to actually do it, right?
Mhm.
Are they going to do it because they were scrolling on their phone and they saw a general strike Instagram graphic? No, right? Why would someone actually participate in a general strike? Because their community is also participating in it, right? So why in Minneapolis was there a local general strike, right? It's because businesses, organizations, right, unions, local political groups, local non-political groups were also individually affected by what was happening in the city, right? Oh my God, my neighbor has been taken. And we are talking about this at my church. And then my pastor said, there's a general strike. Would you join me? I'm going to be marching, right? That is why people join in action. It's always because of something in their lives. When you look at the history of general strikes, you know, they all go on general strikes in France all the time. Sure.
Yep.
It's not because people are posting on Instagram. It's because those people are members of unions. They have been organized year round, and those unions are part of a national group that says we're going to call a general strike, right? So, you know, this idea of like, oh, we're just going to say it. We're just going to say general strike and people will do it is nonsense. That's not organizing, right? That's like pseudo organizing. Now, and actually organizing for a general strike, when you see, you know, the head of the UAW say, hey, let's have multiple national unions sync up our contract expirations so they all expire on the same day so that we can call a general strike. He's talking about the leaders of, you know, let's say ideally a dozen unions, right? Him, the flight attendants, the Writers Guild, the Teamsters, right? And they all have a conversation and say, let's all mobilize our people to all go on strike at the same time, strategically for a specific end, right? That's how you get an actual general strike going. Or you have, you know, a crazy local incident like happened in Minneapolis that causes sort of spontaneous organization, right? But you can never get around the need to organize. It's always about that, not just local, face-to-face organizing.
All right, so not just local, you need face-to-face organizing. It sounds like your take is that a general strike, even if a bunch of unions are involved, but it's not connected locally to local actions, is not something that could be effective in this moment. Am I right in interpreting it that way?
Correct. And it's not so much local. It's not strictly geographical. It's like your community and what matters to you. Okay. So you in your life, right? You have actual connections to actual other people in your life, right? To your place of employment, to your, your neighbors, right? If your kid goes to a school, to other parents in the school, to your church if you're a member of a church, right? These are people who matter in your lives. They're either dependent on you, like if you imagine you died at this moment, right? They would lose some money because you wouldn't show up to work. They would be sad because they have an actual social connection with you. Maybe the church would be missing an usher because you do that every week, right? Those are actual, like, real connections that have weight to people, okay? The way that you exert pressure on the world is through those connections. And the way that you can be motivated to do something is through those connections, right? So if you want to help a general strike, go to your church where there's 50 people who might listen to you, right? If you want to start a general strike, talk to a pastor who knows 50 people who can get them to do something, right? That is the reason that people do things. That is where we have power. And so when you are looking at what do you do to change the world, right? And you watch the news and you're like, oh my God, fascism is so big and I hate what a senator from a different state is doing. You know, what do I do about it? Well, the truth is nothing. Yeah, you do nothing because you have no power. You have no power over what happens. Yeah, you have no power over Donald Trump. You have no power over Joe Manchin or whoever the you're mad at, right? You have no power over whatever it is Rachel Maddow is telling you to be mad about. And so if you want to make the world better, look at what is happening in your own community that you have power over and what you can show up to. Like I guarantee you, no matter where you live, there is some politician who is doing something that you don't like, and you have power over them, and you can show up at a meeting at which they are present and say, hey, I don't like that. I'm your constituent. Or you can vote for somebody else, or you can donate to somebody else on your local level. You have to look at where you actually have power and exert that power, not have a fantasy of, doing something to somebody who has nothing to do with you. If enough of us do, the problem in America is that we've stopped doing this. It's the bowling alone effect. We've stopped going to church. We've stopped participating in our schools. We've stopped being a member of unions. When we do all those things, now we're a member of a web of organization that actually does go nationally. If you're a member of a union, you're a member of a local, which is maybe part of a national, which maybe has an elected president, right? Who might be the president of UAW, who's a progressive guy, or the progressive, or the head of the flight attendants union, Sarah Nelson, who's a wonderful national activist. And they might decide, hey, let's get all of our people to do something, and you're one of those people, and now you're a part of an organized structure of people who are doing things together. And that is how we actually make change.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're talking about a lot of, in my world, we talk about that as kind of civic infrastructure and, the connectivity of our social lives and our, the social networks in which we are embedded. And now I want to pivot back to LA politics, right?
Sure.
So you gave us a blueprint about ways to get involved, the ways that communication matters. Tell us how you're doing that and how that is working with Nydia's campaign that you're working on in LA.
I mean, Nithya has, built a progressive political infrastructure that didn't exist before she ran the first time. Literally, there was no progressive electoral politics to speak of in Los Angeles at all. And she built both a constituency of people who realized, oh, wait, I can, do something at a local level. Oh, I voted for you 4 years ago and things got better, or I voted for you 6 years ago was the first time she ran. And a movement of other electeds who, benefited from the same sea change, who stepped into office. So now we have, she was the first person to sweep aside an incumbent in 2020. Since then, we've had 3 or 4 more. And on a very small city council of, a little over a dozen people, we have a very powerful city council with a very low number of elected leaders in LA. We have a good, 4 or 5 who are now progressives. Depending on, I would say 3 of them are strong progressives, and then 2 more, get them on the right day. You know what I mean? Which is great. That's approaching a coalition, right? Because you need those people who only agree with you half the time to get something done half the time, right? There's been real changes to the city as a result that people have felt. And there has been we've built a political machine that is able to get people elected that didn't exist before. The old political machine is based on backroom deals and, established power centers like developers, some of the very, old line public employee unions like the firefighters and the police unions, right? They're used to, we anoint someone and then they win, right? Because we send out a lot of mailers. They're not used to, hold on a second, 10,000 members of a progressive union went and knocked 500,000 doors, right? They don't know how to fight back against that. And when you bring a new kind of strategy like that, you can win. Now, it doesn't mean that
using that now? Sorry, are you using that now?
Yeah, I mean, as much as possible. It's a very fast election. Nithya decided to jump in at the last minute because no other progressive who was running a plausible campaign had jumped into the race. And she saw a lane and said, I think that, people are ready for change in the city to move in a progressive direction. So she jumped in very late. And so we have a limited amount of time to knock doors, but yeah, that's what we're doing. There's of course, that we're doing advertising, we're doing social media, etc. But, it does come down to, making people feel that there is something that they can do in their own community, right? You need to involve people in the movement if you want them to actually give a and turn out and vote.
So I know that there has been this discussion about how the number one way to address the climate crisis in LA is through housing. And I was wondering if you can talk a little bit about that for a minute and about how you see those connections.
The crisis that we have in LA is primarily a housing crisis. You know, the city was built on the idea of being an endless suburb where everyone would have their own ranch home, and that resulted in a city that, first of all, is far too big and spread out. Traffic is terrible. Results in huge amounts of emissions from transportation, and a lot of human misery. It's sort of a thing that people thought would be attractive in the 40s, and they turned out to be dreadfully wrong about. And it's also resulted in huge amounts of wildfire risk because the zoning laws are such that you cannot build up in the city, so you have to build out. And so they end up building more into the wilderness. And you know, when you look at the communities that burned down a couple of years ago, they were built up right up against, you know, the wilderness, right up against wildfire prone forests, essentially.
I was actually out in February 2025 in Altadena, right after the wildfires subsided. I mean, and my observation was that it absolutely is right up against the wilderness. And in fact, I do some work with the LA Conservation Corps, which basically gets young people involved in helping to build these wildfire breaks where they basically try to cut up areas so that the wildfires can't travel. Because the problem is if there isn't a break there, the wildfire can jump, which is a real problem.
Yep. Yeah, I mean the pattern of development in LA is a big part of the problem. I mean, there's plenty more that can be done in terms of mitigating the wildfires in the wilderness itself. But it's about how LA was built. You know, if we want housing to be cheaper in the city, we need more of it. We need to be more dense, and that's a huge issue in the mayoral election right now. And our progressive candidate is, you know, supporting much more dense building throughout the city.
Very cool. Okay, so this podcast is going to go out to a lot of people, and they're going to be like, I get it. I'm not supposed to be on my computer so much, and I can't just like things on Instagram. So I'm wondering if you had to tell people one thing they could do, what would be the number one thing that everybody should just do to raise it a little bit more, to lift the boat?
Yeah, it's find something to join. Find a group to join in your local community. And it should be a group that you actually care about. In my case, it was a local homelessness group in my union, right? I was very lucky that other people started that group. I wouldn't have had the wherewithal to do it myself, but it was just started by members of my community. But for other people, that might be your church, it might be a school group, etc. A really good example of this is your local Democratic Party organization, right? Like assuming that you're, left of center on this. There is one everywhere, right? And the party is in fact made up of these local groups, which affiliate into state groups, which affiliate into the national group, right?
Although a lot of local groups have a lot of Democratic groups have really eroded. And unfortunately, the Democratic Party at the national level has not invested the time and energy to build that level of infrastructure. I mean, so in some places, you're right, but in some places, it's very, very weak and there's not much there, you know?
You can't wait around for someone else to build the infrastructure for you, you know? Yep. Oh, Chuck Schumer didn't let me go to a meeting. Like, what are you talking about, right? There is a meeting in your neighborhood. I don't give a shit if there's two people there, right? Go be the third. Right. You do on some level need to be the change, right? Why are those local Democratic groups moribund? Well, sure, it's the national leadership not investing in them. It's also the electorate not showing up to them, right?
I actually wrote a whole book about this, Adam. We could talk about it at some point. But yeah.
Well, please, I'll talk about it. It's your podcast.
No, I mean, I just would say, but you have it right. So, you know, you're doing a great job here. I mean, but yeah, the local has been eroded. But I mean, I also would argue that the Democratic Party, and I have argued in books like Activism Inc., that the Democratic Party has shortcutted a lot of local connections and replaced it with these, you know, get votes fast techniques that involve relying on digital ties rather than building, you know, real grassroots strength. And we've seen it over and over and over again. I mean, the book Activism came out in 2006, and I highlighted that, and I talked about how the outsourcing of grassroots campaigns was causing problems in America and was also making young people feel turned off and disconnected from the party. And unfortunately, that issue and the problems that I talk about there still exist in the Democratic Party. In fact, they're a lot worse because there have been a lot more digital tools that have been made available so that you just can donate with a button, and you can all get harassed with those annoying text messages that I'm sure if you haven't figured out how to get your spam control under, to do it, it's the constant, today is the day. If you don't give your money, democracy falls.
Yeah.
Those ones. Yeah.
And the fact that the political system, and I know most Democrats, even elected leaders, hate those texts, right? But the fact that is how most people are hearing on their most intimate device, right, from Democrats supposedly, is such a sin on the part of the people who run the party, right? But here's the thing, Dana. We can sit here all day and say, oh, the Democratic Party should have done this or that differently. And unless Chuck Schumer is listening to the podcast or whoever else is in charge of the party, right? That we don't want to tell a message as media professionals that is just for them, right? Like, oh, here's what you guys need to do, because they're not going to do that, right? Or we get very lucky.
The people who are listening, they could change that system.
Exactly, right? The people who are listening are the average people who want to do something, right? And so the reframe that I'd say is, yes, it's a mistake on the part of the party and the national liberal establishment to not make use of the power of individual people in their local communities and organize them to make change on a national scale, right? If you are listening to this message, though, you need to recognize you have that power, whether they harness it or not. And so when the question is, what do I do as an individual? You go use it anyway. Don't wait for them, right? Go find a place to use it in your community. And then it will grow. The power does filter upwards. And even if it doesn't filter upwards, well, at least you've made your corner of the world a better place. And when you die, you can die with a smile on your lips because you know that you've done all you could do, right?
And you are building power, whether the power doesn't trickle up, flow up, I don't know, evaporate up or whatever. There are a whole bunch of channels for that, but you're right. I mean, I think I think one of the important messages here, which is an optimistic message, is that power is all about building it in your community and building it yourself. And you shouldn't be waiting for somebody to tell you how to do it.
Right.
Although I guess Adam Conover just told you how to do it, right? There it is. Well, that's how you build power.
I mean, that's a slight spur to action, but all I want people to do is Google, local group in my area that I care about, and then show up to a meeting, and then my part's over, right? Just keep showing up to the meeting.
Right. Well, I mean, that actually brings us to my last real question, which is, so we're sitting here at spring 2026, right? We've got a lot of issues happening. We've got our midterm elections coming up in the fall. You have a primary coming up in June. So why is this specific conversation about local labor, local politics, local power, city level action? How is this more urgent today than it might have been, when we spoke a year ago, for example, or 2 years ago? I mean, or do you think it's the same?
I think it's always equally urgent. I think that I'm a little bit of a Buddhist about it, right? It's like the only moment is the present moment. The only thing you can do is the thing that you can do. All you can ever do in this life, right, is you wake up, you feed yourself, you feed your kids, you secure the resources you need to feed yourselves tomorrow, right? And then in the time you have left in the day, you say, what can I do to make the world a better place today? You don't say, how do I solve the climate crisis? Because you can't. You don't say, how do I end fascism? Because you can't. You say, what is the action I can take today? That action is almost always something in your community. The national media is constantly trying to get you to focus on stuff and be angry about stuff that you do not have power over. And yeah, you should know about what's happening in the world. I'll watch the news and go, oh man, that fucking sucks, right? But if I make my local community better, it'll trickle upwards. And that is what if you can turn your attention back to that in the Buddhist sense, turn your attention back to the present moment, right? Over and over again. That's sort of the soul of mindfulness, right? You will actually be contributing to the only thing which has ever changed the world.
Well, that's a wonderful way to end. I do have the final thing, since
please,
you just wrapped that up so nicely, is we're trying this idea of a lightning round, okay? So here's how it works. I'm going to list a bunch of issues, and I want you to respond by just saying if today you are feeling apocalyptic about it or optimistic about it. Ready? Democracy in America.
Optimistic.
The fall 2026 election.
Optimistic.
Unions and labor in America.
Optimistic.
Look at you. Okay. Youth political participation. Yeah. Today.
I'll say apocalyptic.
All right, now we'll wrap it up since you live in the land of wildfire and there's a horrible drought. Climate action.
Oh, climate action. Apocalyptic.
All right, well, so that's what I've got for you today. Thank you so much for taking time to talk to us and for joining the Apocalyptic Optimist podcast.
No problem. Thank you for having me, Dan. It's been wonderful being here.
Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you're feeling a little less apocalyptic and a little more optimistic now. I'm Dr. Dana Fisher, and I'll see you next time. If you like this episode, like, subscribe, and even pass it to a friend. Thanks.